But when you hear about, particularly the stories of UAP or UFO encounters, the ones that intrigue me the most are the ones that are military pilots, that people that know the difference between a flock of birds and weird anomalies. If you're aware of the Tic Tac incident, So when you hear about things like that, and there's a couple possibilities. One, super advanced, blacklisted military, some sort of a propulsion system that they've been working on for decades, completely in secrecy, and they're testing them off of areas where you have a lot of military activity, which is where these things do take place.
Yeah.
One of them was San Diego, that's the Nimitz, and the other one, the Ryan Graves footage, the stuff that they get, that's on the East Coast. But it's all in areas where they already do military training exercises with fighter jets. So it would make sense that that's where if this was the United States government doing that stuff, they would do that. But when you get back to like 2004, and you're talking about something that can go from 50,000 feet above sea level to sea level in less than a second, I think it's 7/8 of a second it went. You have visual confirmation, you have radar, you have video of it, you have 2 different jets that see this thing. No one understands what it is. It flies directly to their CAT point where their meetup point was supposed to be.
Yeah, it's fast. I would love to know what the hell happened. I think, like everyone, I'm fascinated by it.
You can't throw it away. It's one of those ones you can't throw. I throw most of them away. Most of them, I love UFO stories because they're fun.
Yeah.
But most of them, could be anything.
Something shady going on.
Could be anything. Could be people want attention. Could be military exercises. Could be mass delusion. Could be people just love to be special and have had some sort of an encounter, which they do. It gives them some sort of social credit to have some sort of an encounter with a thing, and they exaggerate. And people love to exaggerate.
Yeah, I'd love to make this ingestible to science. That's sort of been my goal. Like, how can science take a hold of this? And when we do these experiments, I told you about this moon that I thought I found, and it turned out it was the instrument being crazy, right? Because sometimes instruments do crazy stuff that we don't understand. So the only way to figure that out is to get hold of the instrument, right? We need to get it in our labs and take that thing apart and test it and calibrate it. And we don't have access to those military devices. It's all top secret. So we can't even do that experiment. But I can imagine thinking about how to do that. One of the big numbers we don't know, even with the visual reports, is the false positive rate. So this is a key number in science. Whenever you do an experiment, you need to know how often does the experiment produce something that's spurious, the false positive rate. Now, in the US, there's about 28,000 pilots across all military branches, and they fly something like 200 hours per year on average. So that's 5.6 million hours in the air every year in 1 year. Now, let's say a pilot, 1 in every 10,000 hours that they fly, they make a mistake. They misidentify a balloon for a UAP or whatever it is. 1 in 10,000. That's an incredibly low, by the way, error rate to have. But even then, you'd end up with 560 UAPs a year made that way, all spurious, all not real, just from human error. So the only way, and that's actually pretty similar to Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book found about 742 per year was being reported. So, I made that number up, 1 in 10,000. But we need to know what that number is. If it turns out there's an excess, like the error rate is 100,000, then that Project Blue Book number is super interesting. And it would be in excess, and we'd say we've detected something. There's a real anomaly here that we have to look at. But the problem is we don't know what that number is. I mean, you'd have to somehow put these pilots in like simulators or something where you have complete control conditions for thousands of hours and somehow test how often do they make these mistakes.
Also, the problem, Project Blue Book was not an objective analysis of UFOs. They had a directive, and the directive was to discredit everything.
Yeah, but even so, I'm just giving you sort of ballpark. I mean, the NASA UAP task force was similar kind of numbers. You're getting like hundreds per year of these sorts of events, right? I don't think that's a crazy number to throw around. So the whole point is that whatever numbers you choose, you have to know the error rate of the experiment. And we could imagine making that legit and doing it. There's actually one of the recommendations of the task force, the NASA UAP task force, was to develop an app on people's phones, iPhones, because they have magnometers on them, they have GPS, they have the camera, these high resolution images. So there's enough instrumentation on there, and it's all the same, and we understand that technology, that you could have 10 people video the same UFO, and you'd be able to triangulate the position, the speed, get the distance to it. You'd get all that kind of information.
Right.
And so there is actually, I think there's an app called Enigma you can now download that does this. So there's some independent apps which have been developed to do this.
Really? Just about UAPs?
Yeah, for UAP spotting.
I wonder what they did with those in New Jersey when they were having all those stupid drone sightings.
I chatted to one of the developers and they said, yeah, things were going crazy that week. They said it was lighting up.
What was that all about?
Like
that
Christmas.
was so strange. That was so strange. That's one of those things where I feel like the government completely failed us in explaining to people, is this some sort of top secret military thing? Is this another country? Is this some sort of a private business that wants to test how fantastic their drones are? Like, why?
Yeah.
Why is this happening? And why are you freaking everybody out? Like, what?
It really sucks that we live in an age of drones and so many like Starlink satellites, because if you see something in the sky now, your immediate reaction is that's probably a human-controlled vehicle. If you could go back to the 1940s or 1930s, then if you had UAP reports then, I think they'd be more convincing, because there's no that's pre-Sputnik, right? There shouldn't be anything in orbit of the Earth at that point.
Right.
So that would be more compelling.
Right, and all those stories like the Kenneth Arnold incident and all these different ones are just these anecdotal tales of people saying they saw things in the sky. And I'm not saying they're liars, but that's not enough. Yeah. I need something.
Yeah, I think it depends what your goal is. If your goal is to convince yourself that aliens are out there because you saw a UFO, I think that's easy enough to do. But most people in that world, they want more than that. They want me to believe it. They want you to believe. They want everyone to believe it, to come along for the ride.
Right.
Yeah,
100%.
It's like having a religious guy come knock your door, like, join my church. That it's not enough for them to have the personal belief. It has to grow. And so if you really want to convince everyone, that's going to naturally include the skeptics, the doubters. It's going to include the scientists. If you want to bring everyone in with you, then the standard of evidence is going to be pretty damn good. It's got to be really strong, and we're just not there, right? There's too many ways out right now.
If I was an alien civilization and wanted to observe Earth undisturbed, I'd make sure I didn't leave enough evidence for science to take me seriously.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
I would never show myself. Like, why would I feel like if they can?
But then why the
from
UFOs at
somewhere
all?
else?
If that's
because
true.
they're probably monitoring us. Like I would monitor us if I was a scientist from another planet. If imagine we leave this planet, we become interstellar, we evolve past war and all the horrible things that are holding us back right now. We reach a state of evolution 1 million years more advanced, and then we start to explore the galaxy for other habitable planets and we find something like us.
Yeah.
I mean, what would we go? Oh boy, all right, we got one.
Yeah.
I would also say, let's make sure that they don't fuck this up where they have to start back from scratch because they nuke themselves into oblivion and we have to wait till everything cools off before complex life can form again, which is it's a legitimate possibility.
Yeah. This stuff is landing or crashing around the world, and unexpected countries have had this happen, and that's why I picked that, because I thought that was a interesting case. And then, of course, Pope Pius XII and the Vatican were involved, back-channeling it through the OSS to FDR, and that's how the U.S. knew something weird happened in Italy right before World War II. But
so this was 33 was the first documented.
That is the earliest one I can talk about. Yeah.
There's something that predates that?
You could infer that.
You could infer that.
Yeah.
So this 33 one you said was in Italy?
Yeah, Magenta. So it's I'm bad at geography. I think that's like a Lombardy region. It's like northwest Italy.
And what's the story behind it?
So basically it looked like it crashed, right? The original shape most likely was like a lenticular disc-like craft, with like two dinner plates.
What does lenticular mean?
So like two dinner plates, smushed together, right? The hump, and there's like a bubble on top.
Like the classic
saucer. Like that. But it looks like when it hit, the edges broke off, so it became this like bell or acorn shaped thing. And there was nothing in it. It was like just an artifact. There was no biological remnants, if you will. So it's so funny because the Italians were so confused, they actually called up the Germans and they were like, is this one of your Wunderwaffe? Like, what the hell just crashed in northern Italy? Mussolini, and this is all publicly available information because some Italian researchers found all these original documents that some people were sitting on for years in Italy. They put a gag order on the press, etc. And Mussolini asked the Germans to come down. And of course, the Germans came down and they were like, that is not ours, but let's look at it together. So that's kind of perhaps a tertiary reason the kind of Axis powers got together. I'm not saying that's like the reason, but I think the Italians and the Germans were so intrigued with what they found from like an artifact perspective. There was at least some scientific and military collaboration during the war, the details of which I'm not sure of, but I know people that know that specific event that are currently still intel officers within this program. But
so was there witnesses to the crash or some sort of an understanding that something had crash landed and then they discovered it?
Yeah, I forget the precise discovery. I don't know if it was like local police officers or local farmers found it in the field, something like that. I don't want to misspeak. I assume some of the Italian researchers might have some fact witnesses that can orally say, "Oh yeah, my great-grandfather found it" or something like that. But I don't remember off the top of my head.
What was the scale of this vehicle?
It was probably like 20 feet by 10 feet, something like that, kind of big.
Do they think that this was a drone? Do they think that this was occupied?
There was nothing in it. So if it was piloted, if you will, by some sentience, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. So.
So what happened to that vehicle?
So we knew where it was being stored at a particular location after the crash, and then the military came in and we grabbed it towards the end of the war, 1944, 1945, because, like I said, Pope Pius XII already kind of let FDR know.
Why did the Pope get involved? Because it's in Italy?
Well, there's like a whole history of human intelligence prior to World War II, and old money, the Vatican, the Italian mob, kind of the old country boys did a lot of informal intelligence collection for the U.S., and there's probably some books you can read on it, but it's really interesting. Human intelligence collection wasn't really formalized until the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, which became the CIA in 1947. You had Paul Mellon and all these other affluent guys of all these old money families that basically created the CIA.
So this thing that was recovered, this was the first documented one that the United States had access to?
I can't get into if it was the first or not, but it was an early one.
Very early.
Yeah.
So it's almost 100 years ago.
Yes.
And so they take this thing and then they bring it where?
I can't get into those.
Can't get into that.
No.
Okay, so they bring it somewhere in the United States, and was the attempt to try to back engineer this thing? Was the attempt to try to understand what it was?
Yeah, I mean, first of it, obviously, it's understanding the situation, right? What do we have our hands on, and like I've said in some other videos and stuff, we took the Manhattan Project secrecy and overlaid it on this issue because that secrecy worked well for atomic bomb developments and whatnots. And certainly this whole program in a nutshell, if I were to summarize the 90 plus years of history, it is a reverse engineering program to garner some kind of insight. And of course, not a lot of the things that we've learned from it are directly, ripped off the technology we found, but it has inspired other innovations that made its way into other U.S. classified programs over the year for national defense reasons, and it's a myriad of different things. So
the UFO folklore is that this is where fiber optics were discovered first.
Yeah, I'm not going to break the seal on anything we've discovered or anything like that, and it's a place I can't go to.
How limited are you in what you can discuss and what you can't discuss, and why?
Yeah.
Why do they let you discuss any of this?
Yeah, so anything sensitive that I want to say as it relates to U.S. government activity, whether it be intelligence stuff, military stuff, etc., I have to submit it through what they call DOPSR, DoD Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review. That is something anybody who's been an intel officer, anybody with a clearance, has to submit that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, if you're writing a book about gardening, you don't have to. But if you're going to talk about anything military and intelligence related, you have to submit. So it's kind of a catch-22 for this office. They're only looking at it from a security perspective. They're not vouching for it or anything like that. And that's like any author, right? They could write a book about Navy SEALs and they're not vouching for the story. They're vouching that you didn't say any nasty code words. And for them, I mean, I'm not in their OODA loop, but certainly it's a catch-22 for them where if they want to redact and they propose a redaction, they're like, hey, Dave, you can't say these sentences. You can rewrite it and resubmit. You know, we can't necessarily tell you what agency said to redact it, but you're not allowed to say this. They would be basically self-certifying there's a there. So in my opinion, probably the policy is like, if it has to deal with the subject, we're not saying anything. We're not proposing any redactions. As long as he's not burning a conventional program, we kind of have to allow him to exercise his First Amendment rights. And so I think it's like a catch-22 for that office is kind of the long, or the short of the long answer.
So this is essentially one of the very early ones, 1933. Mm-hmm. How many crash retrieval incidents have there been?
The specific numbers I do know, however, I can't discuss that. And I know it sounds like, oh, I'm being coy or whatever, but you know, this show, any other interviews I do, right, you know, foreign intelligence services are watching, and it's like, I'm not here to help Russia and China calibrate their intelligence collection. Like, oh, Dave said it's this number, we missed a couple, shit. Let's put it out for the KGB, SVR, and GRU are now going to hit the streets to try to figure out which ones they missed. So I'm here to protect national security, and I'm just trying to put all the general topics out there for public conversation to hold our government accountable, really. So, because I'm here as a fact witness, because we have a constitutional oversight issue because this program has not been reported to Congress in the appropriate way, and I can get into a senator I talked to that has died recently, so I can, explain to you why I'm so sure. Besides what I read, which we can get into what intel reports I read, I did get some stuff cleared, and I'm like, you know what? I need to talk to somebody at the highest levels, right? So, and this will give you an idea of the kind of people we talk to. And this is the only one I'm going to talk about using their name because they died 2 years ago. So in spring 2021, I actually flew with a couple colleagues of mine to Las Vegas. And I met with Senator Harry Reid about 9 months before he died. And of course, he's a private citizen now. And I wanted to brief him on the topic, and I wanted to get his kind of thought leadership on it because, he was a Gang of Eight member, right? Which is the top most cleared senators and congressmen. He was the majority leader, for God's sakes, of the Senate. And I knew, he helped sponsor the OSAP program that I mentioned and where they looked at Skinwalker Ranch and some other things. And I wanted to understand, like, what does Harry Reid actually know? Like, why did he give $21 million to DIA and Bigelow Aerospace for this? So I'm sitting there in Harry Reid's living room with some other witnesses that were there with me, and he straight up says, he's like, yeah, I knew we had UFO material. I was denied access for decades. I tried to get access, and then he explained some of his efforts during OSAP, and I was like, holy shit, did the former majority leader just say, did he just confirm this to me as well? I was already talking to these amazing high-level people, but I have Harry Reid literally saying, yes, we have material, and, he knew it was non-human.
Did Harry Reid have personal experience with this?
I don't know if he's had any personal stuff in his personal life.
I mean, did he see it?
He said,
witness?
In terms of seeing the material himself, he said he was denied access for years, decades was his term, and he actually told me on behalf of me so he had like a weekly call with President Joe Biden at the time, and he straight up said to me he was going to talk to President Biden about this issue, literally. And then what he was telling me about OSAP, I was like, holy shit. I have like 20 other people that told me this, dude. The real history, what fucking OSAP was, because I think there's a lot of people out there that think they were looking at ghosts, Skinwalker Ranch. Yes, they went to the ranch as a secondary and tertiary objective. But the real reason, so like there's a document that came out a couple years ago through FOIA from the Defense Intelligence Agency. There was this special access program request that Harry Reid, you might have seen this, I think like George Knapp and company have reported on this, that he sent to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, William Lynn. And it was asking for one of the most serious SAPs you can ask for, what they call a bigoted, waived special access program. So waived means it's limited congressional reporting. That is a class of special access programs. And bigoted means it's like by name. It was like, you could read the FOIA document. It was like, Harry Reid, James Inhofe, Lou Elizondo, etc. And I'm like, why are you asking for the most serious SAP to be created for a program that ostensibly is looking at Skinwalker Ranch and stuff? And it doesn't make any sense. So what really happened there, and Harry Reid, God bless his soul, made this disclosure a couple weeks after we met in the New Yorker, and you can look this up. I think it was like a May 2021 New Yorker story where he says, I knew for decades, and he made this disclosure, not me, so I'm going to say the name of the contractor. Harry Reid said this. We knew that Lockheed Martin had this material for decades. I tried to get access and I was denied. And specifically with the Lockheed Martin stuff, he was talking about during the OSAP program. And for the people who are on this program, I submitted this shit to DOPSR, got this cleared, so don't freak out, but I'm telling the truth here. So Lockheed Martin wanted to divest itself from this material at a specific facility that's known to me, that I provided to the Inspector General, like street address, all that shit, right? And the idea was if they made a catcher's mitt, a security catcher's mitt for this shit, most serious SAP possible, the contractor and the other government customer, which was the Central Intelligence Agency, for that specific Lockheed material, and it was shit that they recovered from like the 50s and stuff, and it was like bits and pieces of like hull structure, shit like that, and so they were going to tech transfer it, and the $21 or $22 million was actually for Bigelow Aerospace to build out, facilities in Las Vegas and material analysis equipment. And I saw the staff meeting slides, I saw the paperwork I've seen on this shit, and I talked to the people involved in this program.